Hello, neurofabulous friends. Late diagnosed ADHD, and if you're anything like me, your home might have a graveyard of abandoned hobbies. Now, we have spoken about the bullet journal graveyard before, and it could be, in this instance, a closet of yarn that you have never knitted, musical instruments, calligraphy sets, you know, yep, yeah, just so many things. Okay, guess what? If this sounds familiar, you're not lazy or flaky. You're definitely not alone. In fact, what some call hobby hopping isn't a flaw at all. It's driven by our brain's biology. So come on in, friends. If you are here for this conversation today, what I'm actually going to do is I'm actually going to have some AMSR down on the bottom here, and we're going to have a look at some creativity. You can't actually see it. There we go. I'm actually going to do, so last time I did calligraphy was about 2 years ago. So I'm going to do some practice while we're doing today's session because I want to kind of combine my hobby today with the video making. Blah. Okay, so by the end of today's video, you'll understand why your ADHD brain bounces from one obsession to the next, the rush of dopamine, the novelty that kicks it off, and the perfectionism and the frustration that often follow, and the science behind kind of this interest-based nervous system. But more importantly, you'll learn some strategies to work with this cycle instead of against it, so you can enjoy your passions without kind of guilt and burnout. And hey, if you're excited to hack your ADHD brain, do me a quick favor. Hit that subscribe button and join this community that I am getting started. So,
How fabulous friends.
just a quick note, I'm late diagnosed ADHD and autistic adult myself, and I've done deep dives into like the latest research, so 2018 to like 2025, and we're talking like the Journal of Attention Disorders, biology, psychiatry, neuroscience, and biobehavioral research. Like, I've done all the reading, okay, and I wanted to bring the answers because I like to understand my brain even more. So let's jump into the cycle that so many of us know all too well and see how we can turn it to our advantage. So, yeah, stick around. I've got some practical tips. Remember the pure excitement of when a new hobby grabs you, that like all in feeling. It's not just enthusiasm, it's your brain getting a dopamine reward. ADHD brains often have a lower baseline level of dopamine, the neurotransmitter for reward and motivation. So we're constantly seeking a top up of stimulation. Novelty is our kind of super fuel. In fact, research shows heightened novelty seeking is a hallmark of ADHD. And when something is new, interesting, or challenging, our brain lights up like a Christmas tree, flooding us with dopamine and focus power. So that's why deciding I'm going to learn calligraphy or bake artisan bread or start woodworking, please pick one, feels incredible at first. It's essentially a dopamine jackpot. A fresh hobby can provide a massive immediate boost of pleasure and motivation. Beautiful. But one study described it perfectly. ADHDers have what Russell Barkley calls reward deficiency. We're not short on attention span so much as we are understimulated and craving rewards. The kind of anticipation of being great at this new hobby, picturing your future masterpieces, is often more powerful than the hobby itself. This anticipation is the hook that hyperfocuses us initially. So, speaking of hyperfocus, yes, it's a real thing, not just like an internet myth. Research confirms that people with ADHD can slip into periods of intense, laser focused attention on something that fascinates them. Calligraphy, for example. During these hyperfocus episodes, hours can fly by as you immerse yourself in just one activity, losing track of time and external needs. For me, it's usually peeing or eating. So if you've ever started a hobby project at like 8 p.m. and suddenly it's 3 a.m. and you're surrounded by paint tubes and happiness, that's hyperfocus in action and it feels amazing. Many of us even describe it as like a vortex or like a flow state where the rest of the world just flows away and you can really just focus in. Neurologically, what's happening is our interest based nervous system has been triggered, giving our brains something stimulating we can lock on intensely. And in one 2021 study, it found that adults with ADHD report significantly higher levels of hyperfocus than neurotypicals. It's like an ADHD superpower when harnessed well. So, early on in the cycle, we have new hobby equals novelty, dopamine plus hyperfocus. And this is like the honeymoon phase of the new interest. That's why we go all in. We buy all the supplies, watching every YouTube tutorial, talking to someone like till they're blue in the face around these exciting new latest obsessions. And look, I confess, like the calligraphy bug really hit me and I forgot about it, and I've got a lot of supplies and I don't even, yeah, we've all been there. I've got fancy pens, like, please. The classic ADHD impulse to buy, also known as paying the ADHD tax on hobbies because we get the dopamine fueled shopping spree. The key takeaway is our ADHD brains aren't fickle on purpose. They're wired to chase novelty and reward. And as one scientific review put it, our symptoms of distractibility and impulsivity can stem from evolutionary high curiosity and novel seeking drive. In other words, we're explorers at heart, always on the lookout for the next interesting thing. So, relatable so far? Please go ahead, give this video a like if you've ever been in that hyper-focused honeymoon phase with a new hobby, and don't forget to subscribe for more insights. Please, I see you eyeing the next segment. All right, let's now talk about the next part, the crash and burn. Eventually, we all know this part. The shiny new hobby loses its sparkle. Maybe it got like routine or harder than expected. Suddenly, that rush of motivation vanishes. Welcome to what some experts grimly call the valley of despair. Look, they're not wrong. Neurologically, here's what's happening: the novelty fades, dopamine drops, and our motivation crashes, often instantly. It's almost like calligraphy now gives you the ick. The same activity that felt really rewarding yesterday now feels like dragging your feet through mud. This is the point in the cycle where most of us abandon the project, the hobby, or pause it indefinitely. Please, does this sound familiar? 2022 was the last time I did calligraphy. 2022, that was 4 years ago. Instead of pushing through a tedious plateau to mastery, our brain is already itching for a new source of dopamine or excitement. So we move on to the next thing. It's like your mind says, next. And the moment things get boring or frustrating, it just kind of moves along. But there's actually more to the crash than just boredom. Enter the emotional roller coaster. ADHD isn't about attention, it often comes with heightened emotions. In fact, 70% of adults with ADHD struggle with emotional regulation. So when a hobby stops being fun, we don't just feel meh. We might feel massive frustration, guilt, self criticism, and one common emotional hurdle is perfectionism. Ironically, many ADHDers are perfectionists at heart. We set unrealistically high standards and then feel crushed when we don't meet them. Essentially, we could start a saying that says you're either obsessed or overwhelmed. Sound about right. Studies have also noted that perfectionism is one of the most frequent cognitive distortions in adults with ADHD. We get stuck thinking, if I can't do this perfectly, why do it at all? Which can paralyze progress on a project. And I know when my calligraphy strokes aren't Instagram worthy, by week 2, I start avoiding it completely. So you would have seen me do some practicing before I got into it today, even. Even deeper is something called rejection sensitivity dysphoria. And we've spoken about this before, and it's basically an extreme sensitivity to feeling rejected or not good enough. It's not an official diagnostic criteria, but boy, is it a real lived experience. RSD means that a minor critique or personal failure can send us into a spiral of shame or emotional pain. If we sense we're failing at our new hobby, even by our own harsh standards, that dread of disappointment can make us preemptively quit to avoid the sting. Now, Dr. Marcy Cadwell, an ADHD psychologist, explains that people with ADHD often have intense fear of failure or criticism, and perfectionism becomes a shield. So, if we aim for flawlessness, or bail out before failing. So we hope to kind of dodge that pain of rejection. Also sound familiar? It's like we'd rather be the ones to abandon the hobby than risk the hobby abandoning us or proving that we're not good at it. Unfortunately, this feeds a cycle of self blame. Ugh, I never follow through. I'm such a quitter. Emotionally, it hurts. And participants in a 2023 study on ADHD and rejection sensitivity described it as painful, overwhelming experience that can last hours to weeks. So if you ever felt real grief or anger when you lose steam on a passion project, you're not overreacting. Your feelings are valid, 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 even biologically driven. Now, let's not forget the practical fallout too. All of those abandoned supplies are just staring at us. Hello, evidence that we failed. So there's a term called ADHD tax, and this is kind of for the money and time lost on ventures we didn't complete. It can dent our self esteem and our wallet at the same time. And I want you to hear this loud and clear. Dropping a hobby does not make you a failure. As Dr. Barkley and Dr. Megan Neff, an AuDHD psychologist, emphasized, the cycle is a result of how our brains are wired for reward and focus. It's not a moral failing. Feeling bad about it only adds to the paralysis. Instead, what if we accepted that our interest in our hobby might just be intense and temporary? And that's okay. And we learn to ride the wave and even return to old hobbies when the spark reignites. True story. Literally just dusted off my calligraphy set and was like, oh, I forgot that I actually quite enjoyed that. That was fun. I especially like the sparkles. Like that's my vibe. So fun. Um, it could take months or years. So yes. So, quick reminder, if this discussion is resonating with you on an emotional level, please consider subscribing. Also, drop a comment below around what your current super hobby is. I'm super keen to hear. Super keen. So, let's talk about working with your ADHD brain and the cycle. So, we've dissected the problem. Let's talk solutions because I love being solutions focused. How do we work with our ADHD hobby cycle so we can enjoy our passions and creative energy without so much chaos or regret? It starts with understanding that we have an interest based nervous system. This concept, coined by psychiatrist William Dodson, means that unlike neurotypicals who can motivate themselves by importance or rewards, ADHD brains are motivated by interest, novelty, challenge, and urgency. We thrive when we're engaged, curious, and emotionally connected. Basically, when our brain says, "This is so exciting." If a task or hobby doesn't hit one of those buttons, it's like the brain engine sputter, like tick, 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 tick. And it explains so much about why forcing ourselves to stick to a dull routine is excruciating, yet we can hyperfocus on something captivating. So the trick is to hack our tasks and hobbies to be interest friendly. So here's a few strategies backed by ADHD coaches and research that might help. So pause before diving in. When a new hobby or idea strikes, hold off on buying all the supplies immediately. Impulse spending is tempting, and dopamine wants them all, but give yourself, say, 24 to 48 hours. Jot the idea down in like a parking lot or like a list instead of swiping your credit card. Often, the ultra urgent must have it now feeling will pass, and you will save yourself money and clutter. And if after a couple of days you're still excited, you can start gradually. This pause also forces a tiny bit of urgency, a deadline you set, rather than acting on every whim. So, what about mixing novelty with small wins? Your brain loves novelty, but too many new projects at once can also backfire. And ADHD coach Karen Margle warns that don't spray and pray. I just can't with that. That's beautiful. Your energy everywhere. Instead, pick one project at a time to focus on finishing, even a small win. So, like contemplating a single painting or finishing one chapter of that language course gives a satisfying dopamine hit of accomplishment. That feeling sometimes can rival the rush of starting something new. So define what done means for that one current hobby and aim for that. Also, find ways to refresh a stale project with a dose of novelty. Try a new technique, work in a new location, or gamify the process so you can trick your brain into feeling that new excitement again. Something that really works is body doubling and buddy systems. When you hit that motivational wall, the valley of despair, please, that term is wild. Don't go in alone. Invite a friend to co work with you or join a class or a group related to your hobby. This is called body doubling, working alongside someone for accountability. It provides external structure and a little social dopamine. For example, if you schedule a weekly art session with a friend, you're more likely to show up and push through the boring bits because someone else is there. Online communities can serve this role too. Post updates, share progress, get little kudos. It's nice. What about communicate and transition? One practical tip from psychologist Megan Neff is to tell your family, friends, roommates, whoever, when you need or when you are in a hyperfocus. If you're engrossed in a hobby and someone interrupts, that jarring feeling can spark irritation or anxiety. Since being yanked out of a focus vortex literally triggers stress. So to avoid friction, love this, kind of have a signal or a phrase. For example, you can say, give me 5 minutes to save my work or finish this as part so I can switch tasks or whatever it is that you're doing. This gives your brain a moment to gracefully exit the hyperfocus rather than feeling suddenly torn away. Teaching those around you about this need can also make them allies in your process, not just accidental antagonists. So, what about scheduled hobbies, seasons, or times? One clever approach is that you can rotate your hobbies intentionally. Since we tend to cycle through interests, plan for it. For instance, focus on gardening in the spring when it naturally calls to you, crafting in the winter where it's warm and cozy, outdoor sports in summer. Aligning hobbies with the seasons can set periods, or you can create novelty into the loop. And we're also changing it up a little bit, or what's coming as well. So like me with AuDHD, I like to know that something's coming up. So January is calligraphy month or whatever, and you can reconnect with them. And this removes the guilt of dropping something forever, because it's not forever, it's just on pause until the season returns. And lastly, and most importantly, please, please, please be kind to your brain. Our spurts of passion and subsequent burnout can actually be part of a creative divergent thinking process. Fun fact, ADHD is not all drawbacks. Research has noted potentially adaptive traits in ADHD folks, like higher creativity and curiosity. So, those bursts of hobby enthusiasm are when your creativity shines and you learn tons of new skills and information. That's something to appreciate. Even if you don't stick with one thing forever, you likely gain knowledge or joy from each exploration. Maybe you'll come back to it, maybe you won't. But it wasn't wasted time if it sparked happiness or taught you something. Let's be clear. So before we wrap up, remember that your worth is not measured by your unfinished projects. Nicola, we live in a world that values consistency, but neurodivergent people often work in cycles, and that's okay. As one article concluded, having a closet full of unfinished projects isn't a reason for shame. It's evidence that you have a curious, eager mind. So reframe quitting as choosing where to invest your precious interest and energy. You're the opposite of a quitter. You're an explorer. So if you found these strategies helpful, please hit the like button. And if you haven't yet, go and subscribe, because there is a $3 subscription fee to the audiobook, and you can listen to the audiobook. I wrote a book that one time called Unmasking Leadership. Go do that. Anyway, to sum up, the cycle of diving into hobbies and dropping them is a common ADHD adventure. It has clear roots in our brain chemistry. Hello, dopamine and novelty. our unique attention style, hyperfocus, and our big emotions, looking at you, RSD and perfectionism. So the next time you find yourself obsessing over a new interest or conversely struggling to rekindle with an old one, remember there's nothing wrong with you. As research and experts affirm, this is not a lack of character, it's a different operating system. With a few strategies and a lot of self-compassion, you can turn that cycle into something that works for you. So embrace the fact that you have an interest-based nervous system. It means you're driven by passion, curiosity, and authenticity. Work like that. Find what sparks you joy. Marie Kondo. What a hero. Thank you for watching today and spending a little of your hyperfocus here with me. And if this video made you feel seen or gave you some useful ideas, please, for the love of Sweet Pete, give it a thumbs up and be sure to subscribe so you don't miss future videos on understanding your amazing neurodivergent brain. And while you're here, feel free to check out the freebies or the other videos on screen. I've got more on ADHD life hacks, insights, bullet journaling. Remember, you're not alone in this journey. Stay kind to yourself. Keep exploring those interests. And as always, stay neurofabulous. See you in the next one.